So I am doing my end of the month wrap up. So I have been trying my best to go into my physical copies. But it kind of, I don't know, like it makes it difficult for me because, as I said before, Kindle books are easier to get through because I can take them with me. I take the Kindle with me, have it in my bag, where sometimes it's harder to take like a physical book with you and go places. It's much easier to have your Kindle. You can put it away real quick. You don't have to worry about like a not birthmark. Why am I saying birthmark? Bookmark. And all this different stuff like that. Physical copies can make it more of a hindrance. You know, like for the longest time I had, years ago I had like the mini Walkmans, you know, CD players. And I had like how many stacks of CDs that I would take with me to go places. And meanwhile, people had like MP3 players, you know. It was the longest time for me to transition over to something new, like a new technology. And so it's the same thing for Kindle. It took a while for me to finally transition over to like an e-reader. And now that I'm used to the e-reader, it's kind of hard to kind of go back, you know? So I've been trying my best to get through physical copies I have. So if I can find them cheap on Kindle, like either they're available through Kindle Unlimited, or if maybe like the book is like 99 cents or something like that. Even though I already own the physical copy, I'll be like, well, it's 99 cents. I'll buy it, you know, just so I have it on my Kindle. So that's what I've been trying to do lately is that. So I've been going into Meredith Duran. Now that's an author that's, I've heard about. How many people have talked about her? She has since stopped writing. I haven't seen anything, you know, if she is still writing, she's writing on a different name and people don't know what that name is. So I was like, you know what, let me go into her series here that is called the Rules for the Reckless series. And so I went into the first book, and this was I ended up finding this on audio. So I went into this book here, which was That Scandalous Summer. And unfortunately, this is like my first review of like this author's writing. And I was like, you know, the writing was fine. I just didn't like the characters. I ended up DNFing this book because both of the characters to me were insufferable. I could not stand either one of the characters. So this one here had it to where she's Elizabeth Chudley. She's basically a widow. They say she's a merry widow, but she was married to her husband and she was in like a loveless marriage, and she even complained about it. But in the book, she'll have like, she has like these things in her head of like things that her mother said to her. And one of the things her mother said was, don't get into a loveless marriage. Like it was in the book. The mother was telling her, don't get into a loveless marriage. And then meanwhile, afterwards, her husband passes away and she's like, oh, well, I was in a loveless marriage. And I'm like, fucking duh, your mother told you this, dumbass. You know, so I just kind of was like, she was complaining about it, but I'm like, well, your mother warned you. Your mother even warned you don't get into a loveless marriage, you know? And she basically married this guy because he had money. In the meantime, her husband, who's now deceased, ended up making a lot of bad debts and a lot of bad, you know, investments and stuff. And so she's going into debt. And she made a lot of stupid purchases. And so she's going into debt. So now she needs another man that she can marry, so she's not destitute. Meanwhile, what's his name again? Yeah, Lord Michael de Grey. His brother at the beginning was basically telling him, his brother he's the Duke, right? He's the Duke. I always forget. Yeah, Duke. That's right. He is a Duke. I always forget about titles and stuff. The Duke, who's the oldest, he's like telling his brother, Michael, I need you to get married. You know, because Michael right now is, they say he's a doctor, but I'm like, is he a doctor? Did he go to like medical school? Like, I know like back in the day that was kind of a little bit different than it is now. Obviously, medical school is like longer and stuff like that. You got to do a lot more things before you go and treat people. But when I was reading this book, I was like, did he go to like medical school or something? You know, like something, some kind of schooling. I almost thought of him as like, I almost would consider him more of an EMT, because EMTs don't go to school as long as like, you know, a doctor would. So I would kind of consider him more of like an EMT at this point. And he had this hospital that he was basically running, and then he would help treat some patients and stuff like that. But the money was coming from his brother, the Duke. So the Duke's telling him, I'll continue to pay for this hospital, which I'm like, this guy must have a shit ton of money, because running a hospital, that's expensive. Even back in the day, that was expensive, right? So I'm like, okay, the Duke's telling you to get married, so just fucking get married. You know, why are you causing problems for your brother? Just get married. You know, just fucking get married. This guy was like having an affair with like widows and stuff like that. He'd sleep around with widows and different things like that, right? And so his brother's like, I want you to settle down and I want you to get married. His brother also, the Duke, is like dealing with a lot of stuff because his wife was a bitch and she went and was trying to fuck over her husband politically. And so the Duke's a bit bitter right now. And so he's kind of telling his brother, like, you need to stop fucking around, you know, because people know, like, you're doing all these liaisons with these, you know, widows, and you need to settle down and get married. And I want to pick your bride, which I understand is a bit unreasonable. You want to pick the person's bride. So Michael's like, oh, I don't want to follow you. And then he ends up leaving, you know, so he's now living on dwindled funds that he got from his brother, because, you know, like, this motherfucker did not have a job, you know, and so he's living on these dwindled funds when Miss Drunkass, the widow, stumbles into the bushes of this man's estate, which he doesn't own it, he's renting it, and so they start to get to know each other. And I was like, I cannot stand either one of these characters, because her biggest thing was, oh, I need to function by getting drunk. Nope. No. We're now wanting to see this functional alcoholic find her happily ever after. Oh, no. So I was like, okay, this chick here not only is spoiled at this point because she spent like a lot of funds. It's like, your husband dies. Maybe look into the funds after your husband dies. Maybe be smart with the money, because there's only a certain amount that you have. What kind of investments does this man have? All this other stuff. You know, what kind of estates does he have? Look into this shit. You know, like, she was insufferable. And I did not like Michael either. It was like, the more he was whining and complaining, the more I'm like, bitch, you were getting money from your brother who's the fucking Duke. You weren't working a job. You're like, oh, I was being a doctor. Okay, there you go. He was doing doctoring. But it's like, your brother said he's going to close the hospital down. Instead, you leave. And he's like, oh, I want to call my brother's bluff. Meanwhile, he could have closed down the hospital and all those patients would have been screwed. All those people would have been screwed. Because you want to have a temper tantrum. This is why I didn't like both of these characters. And I was like, this is how you open up a series with these insufferable people? And there were other people who did not like this book either. I was checking Goodreads, and there was other people who didn't like the book, didn't like the characters. And I had posted about the other book in the series and how I said I liked it, but I said I had DNF'd the first one because I did not like either one of the characters. And another person on Instagram was like, I didn't like the first book either. And I was like, thank you. I'm glad I'm not the only one who did not like this first book. This one is not good. This is not a good introduction into the series because these characters are insufferable. I would say what's a good introduction is the second book, which I'll talk about. This is going to go to a donation. I'm donating that to my library, and it's going to go bye-bye. So the next one I read and I actually enjoyed. This one was another one I actually listened to on audio. So this is Fool Me Twice. This is the second book in the series. This one's about the Duke. I was curious about him, throughout that book right there. And I can't remember how far I got into this book before I DNF'd it. I don't know if I was halfway through. I think I was at least a good chunk of it before I was like, no, fuck this. So this one here it was interesting. So it says on the back, running for her life, exhausted and out of options, Olivia Halliday wants nothing more than the chance to make a home for herself. So when she realizes that the infamous Duke of Marwick might hold the key to her freedom, she boldly disguises herself as the newest and bravest in a long line of the Duke's notoriously temperamental housekeepers. Little does she know that the wickedly handsome Alistair de Grey has very different plans for her. This one here had it to where she's a secretary and someone tried to strangle her. And she was suspecting it was this person who is a part of it. He's in politics. So she basically runs away. She manages to escape. And she goes and hides herself at the Duke's estate. And she gets hired by I always say valet, but it could be valet, V-A-L-E-T. I think it's valet. I always say valet. She gets hired by him to be the basically housekeeper to run the thing because his house is like gone astray. You've got like maids not doing their jobs, for things like that. So they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. You got like, I think it was the one valet, I think he was like flirting with all the maids. And so I was like, what the hell's going on here? It's like a damn circus, So she comes in and she's like, what is going on here? First she wants to obviously try to come in, sneak in, try to take like whatever she can to blackmail this one politician. And while she's there, she's like, okay, this house is not being run correctly. I need to help fix this up. So she starts getting these people in line. Meanwhile, the Duke is just really grumpy, will basically throw things at you to get you away from him because he wants to basically slop away in his life. He wants to like just make rot away in his life, So he wants to be left alone to rot in his room, embarrassed and angry that his dead wife has been betraying him for years, giving his political enemies his secrets. She died by overdosing on opioids. Dang. And when he discovers her letters, that is when he finds out that she was plotting against him. So wanting to revenge, he has been neglecting his business affairs as well as his estate, drinking himself into rages. Once his new housekeeper comes in, he just wants her to leave and proceeds to fire her. But to his shock and annoyance, she doesn't leave. And slowly but surely, she starts to break the Duke down one day at a time. That's essentially what she does in here, is every day he's like kind of like firing her and letting her go. And she's like, I'm not leaving, So I loved her. I loved her spunk. I loved her, tenacity to kind of like keep going, because she's like, he's hurting. He needs to get back on his feet and run this household like he's supposed to, as a duke should. So while she's trying to like get him to like snap out of it, she keeps trying to continue to look for evidence against this politician. He ends up discovering different things about her, like her lineage, because all we know is that she was essentially like a bastard child, And so the more he kind of like gets to know her and becomes attracted to her, the more he discovers different things. And there's like a whole different other thing that's kind of like going on in here, and I don't want to like spoil it because I'll be doing spoilers. So I don't want to mention that. I'll just say that there's other individuals that are behind the scenes kind of pulling strings, and you weren't suspecting it until you're like, oh shit, something happens, and you're like, oh wow, I was not expecting that person, So while all this stuff is going on, like she's trying to protect herself from getting killed, and the Duke ends up finding out more things, and so he's basically trying to protect her as well. It was good. I really enjoyed this one. This one I gave 4 stars. I did really enjoy it. I really loved how she was like, she was stubborn, but she wasn't insufferable. Like there's certain women who are like, certain heroines who will be stubborn, but they're also insufferable to be around. And you're like, I don't like this person, She was kind. She had to go and do a more authoritative role in that household to kind of get everybody. But once like things started kind of like going together back again, people were grateful. All the staff were happy that she was able to kind of get things under control. And this is a woman who never was a housekeeper. She was a secretary, so, but she knows how to keep to like schedules and different things like that. That's what secretaries do. So that was really interesting how she basically kind of was using her skills to, some of her skills that she learned to go and help run a household and essentially be like the Duchess in a way, before he even decided that he wanted to marry her, So I did really like it, and I liked their banter back and forth because he would kind of like be grumpy to her and she'd kind of give it back to him, and I love banter. When banter's done really well, it works. So yeah, I did enjoy this one, and I'm glad that I was like, you know what? Let me try to give this author another chance because this one here is a dud. Let me see. Because I usually try to do that within like 2 or 3 books. If I'm not enjoying the author's writing or the characters, then it's hard for me to continue on reading the books if I don't like reading them. Like I told my husband, I am very much character driven. Like I love a good plot, but a plot could be a little flawed for me. But if I like the characters, I could keep going. I'm very much character driven. I need to enjoy the characters, especially when it comes to romance. Like if it's a horror novel, I could probably get away with saying like, maybe I don't like any of the characters, but there needs to be at least somebody that you kind of root for, even in a horror. Like you could say, man, that villain was a piece of crap, but that's the whole point of a villain, is you're supposed to hate that character, where you want to see at least some redeeming characteristics with another character. Like, even if you're like, well, this person isn't perfect, they're not a great person, but you still want to root for them because you hope that they redeem themselves at the end, And so with him there, he was obviously bitter, but there's a reason why he was bitter, a reason why the Duke was so bitter. His wife was a fucking bitch, like she was trying to sabotage this man and basically married him, not really for like love. And the more she was with him, the more she was like wishing him ill. Cause he very much was like career driven. And then it's like, oh, well, I don't like, cause he spends so much time in his work, that she was basically wanting to sabotage his career because she felt like, oh, he wasn't giving her enough attention. No, you can go and talk to this person and tell them, hey, let's spend some time together. You know, maybe be his helpmate. Maybe take some pressure off of him so he's not feeling so, you know, wrapped up in his work. Like maybe if you help him in some way, it will help him so he can relax a little, and then you can spend more time together, you know, help him too, you know? So, especially because it's like, these women aren't working, you know, they're not working. They're essentially housewives, you know, they stay at home. So do things at home to have the house in order, you know, to make it to where it's easier for him to come home to, you know, and spend time, you know, and all that stuff. So to me, I kind of felt like the way his wife went about it was a dirty bitch way. She was doing it in a dirty way. And then she became addicted to like opioids. Then she was sleeping around on him. Like she was having affairs with these other men, you know, these other politicians and stuff. So I was like, no wonder the Duke's bitter. So when he comes across like this one here, that's like challenging him and like saying like, no, you need to take care of yourself and you need to go and get you back on your feet and, you know, smash your political enemies. I mean, this woman was like his cheerleader. You know, she was trying to help him out. So I'm like, this is the woman he needed. He needed this woman. So I did enjoy this one. So with the Rules for Reckless series, I had put a little tab on here to let me know this is a series. We got Lady Be Good. So I'm hoping I can get to this one in April. And I probably will have to physically read it because there's no audiobook for it. There was 2 audiobooks for the first 2 in that series, but there's no audiobook for it. So I'm going to have to physically read this, or if I find this cheap on Amazon for like, you know, $1.99 or whatever it is, I may just pick up the ebook, and it's quicker for me to get through the book. It's much easier for me to get through. Where sometimes even like say like some of the sometimes when I'm reading, sometimes the font is too small. And I'm nearsighted, you know, like I have to wear my glasses for distance, but even nearsighted, sometimes a font will be too small and it's hard to kind of get through, you know, like my eyes start to get tired, more quickly. So if, this is available for me on ebook, cheap or free, then I'll do it. Otherwise, I'm going to have to physically read it, and it may take me a little longer to physically read. Just for the fact that, like I said, as I'm getting older, things are kind of harder to read even close up, you know, especially when it comes to the font and stuff. If the font's too small, where with Kindle, I can make the font bigger, you know? So that's a downside to a physical copy. But this is the next one in the series that I want to get through. And so I wanted to see if this one here is any good. I don't recognize the characters, so I don't think there are any characters that I was introduced to in the previous book. None of them sound familiar to me. So this might be one of those ones where you could probably skip over this book here and read this one if you wanted to, because I don't recognize the characters when they talk about them. So I don't think it's anything where you got to pay attention to the series that much, you know. And then I wanted to get to this one here because someone had told me that they really liked this one here. And they said it reminded them of, I think they said it reminded them of Dreaming of You, I think. So I wanted to get into this one here because I think this one, he's a crime lord. Yeah. So it says, having conquered the city's underworld, Nick seeks a new challenge, marrying Catherine. Okay. So that one there. And then these are the last 2 of the series. You got that one and then this one. These were all a part of the same series. And then she had standalones. So I figured I'd get through the series and then do the standalones. And then that'll be it for that author right there. And then I was going to try to get into like Loretta Chase, if I can. Like if I can get my brain into like, yes, read these authors, you know. Because that's the thing, like I can't read authors like on a TBR. I can't read them from a TBR. It just, my brain starts thinking of like school time and being forced to read a book. And Like, I could physically get through a book. If somebody forces me to read it, I could get through it, but I may not enjoy my time, you know? So I need to go into when the mood strikes. I'm like, oh, this sounds interesting. I want to read this. And then I can find more enjoyment in it. So the next book, I physically have this, but I did not bring it with me in here. This is A Notorious Love by Sabrina Jeffries. Now, this is another physical book that I own that is a reread for me. And I wanted to reread this one because I haven't read it in a while. And I'm like, do I like this book? Or is this something that I would just want to get rid of? Because I had picked up a bunch of Sabrina Jeffries, like all of the rest of her books that she, except for her like newest ones, I have most of her books. And so I was like, let me reread this one again because I don't remember the story. I don't remember it. So the characters were Daniel Brennan and Lady Helena Laverick. So this one here, the previous book in this series, I did not like. I did not like the characters. They annoyed me. I ended up DNFing it. I did read the book previously years ago, but I'm like, maybe that's why I ended up giving the book a 3-star, was because I did not like it, which I, went in again. I was like, yep, these are the same feelings I felt as the last one. I would still consider it a 3-star because I could not stand either one of the characters. So with this one here, we were introduced to Daniel Brennan and Lady Helena in the previous book. Lady Helena is the heroine in the previous book's sister. She's like, I believe she's the eldest. And so she has a cane. You end up finding out they had a different name for it years ago, but essentially what she had ended up getting was polio. And so she survived polio, but it left her with a limp. And so it made her one leg very weak and like more atrophied. So she has to walk with a cane. And so there's like a carriage trip in here. It's more of like almost like a road trip. There's class difference because, like I said, she's considered a lady, even though how they came to be ladies is questionable and all that stuff. So there's that in there too. And then there's a fake marriage, like they pretend to be married. So Daniel Brennan is basically the bastard child of like former smuggler and stuff like that. So he doesn't have a good reputation, and he had dealt with a lot of stuff. He grew up with like smugglers, like this man ended up like taking him in, and then you end up finding out like who the man really is and everything in this book and all that stuff. I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but she needs help. Lady Helena needs help when her younger sister Juliet elopes with a man that Helena doesn't trust. She thinks that Juliet was basically taken. It's like she says, oh, she was kidnapped. Even though Daniel kind of like opens her up and says, did she really get kidnapped or did she like run away and elope? And so she's like, well, I think she eloped, but I also don't trust this man. I think he's like a money grubber, like a gold digger. So she enlists the help from Daniel Brennan, a man she knew last year that was pretending to be a man with a title, and he really is the bastard son of an Irish smuggler. So Daniel Brennan doesn't want to take Helena with him while he searches for her sister because he's very much attracted to her, but Helena won't take no for an answer. So while they're traveling, they pretend to be married, and the more time they spend together, the closer they get. So I said my thoughts. I said, this is a reread for me. I read this book years ago and I don't remember the story. The previous book in this story I wasn't a fan of, but I enjoyed this book more, which I did. The last book, like I said, I couldn't stand either one of the characters. They really annoyed me, really grated on my nerves. Where this one here, I liked both of the characters. I did feel like Lady Helena was very stubborn, but I understood her reasonings why. I could empathize with her character, I said the only thing I thought was weird was there were a few chapters where we were in Juliet's POV, and I thought that was kind of weird. Like I've seen that before, like years ago. There were authors who kind of did that, where sometimes to introduce you to the next story, they would kind of give you a little bit of a teaser in the previous book. And I'm not a huge fan of that because I feel like it takes away from the main character's romance and their storyline, because we're now being bombarded with another storyline. So I don't like it when authors do that. I would prefer if it's toward the end of the story, where we maybe get more of a epilogue, and in the epilogue it kind of like shows you a little bit of a teaser for the next book. I would prefer that. So we had a few times where it was Juliet's POV, and Juliet is like thinking that, oh, she's gonna elope with this man, you know, and he's very much kind of like trying to keep her at a distance, and you could tell within the storyline, like, oh, he really, you know, there's other motives that of why he has her, you know? Even though Juliet's not dumb, she starts to figure things out, you know? I felt like that could have been taken a bit away from Helena and Daniel's romance. Like I said, Daniel didn't think that Helena would ever want him due to his circumstances of birth, but she didn't care about that. She just didn't want him to lie to her. And that was the biggest thing for her, is she doesn't want him to be disingenuous with her and lie to her about his true humble beginnings or anything else. You know, she wants him to be truthful to her because she's had men lie to her in the past in trying to marry her, only to find out that they didn't like the fact that she was, what she would say, lame. They didn't like the fact that she had, you know, she was basically a cripple, what they would call her, and all that stuff. Even though I'm like, well, she survived polio. She survived polio. And she's, you know, like I said, she's a survivor. So it's like, you're going to go and put her down because she had gotten something that she couldn't help. She survived polio. A lot of people died from polio, you know? Like my mom talked about how there were certain vaccines that were introduced to her, like when she was little, that they would put on a sugar cube. And that's how you took your vaccine. Now it's kind of like different. But she told me different stuff, like that's what they did back in the day. And like there was different inoculations that you would see of people that had them. Like they would have like a little circular right here. Like that was like a polio vaccine shot. And you knew someone, you know, obviously had gotten vaccinated for polio. And so that wasn't a certain time frame. So like, say like, there's certain movies that maybe the person was like, they would go back into the past. They were from the future. And so they go into the past. So anybody who has like that inoculation scar, they would be like, well, why is this person, you know, they're looking at this. How do you get this scar? What's the scar? It's a polio vaccine scar. So it kind of makes it to where you're like, what was this person doing in this time? You know, that don't make any sense. I think it had like, there was a movie called 12 Monkeys that kind of had like kind of a similar thing where you're like, well, how is this person having a polio vaccine inoculation scar when polio, the vaccines were not created until this time frame, you know? So you're like, how is that person in this time frame? So yeah, it kind of like, I've seen movies like that before where you're like, wait, this person is from this time, but they have a polio vaccine scar, you know? So yeah, there was that. So the fact that like she survived it even before the vaccines were available, she, you know, she's a survivor. She survived it. You know, she got through it. She's tough. You know, she managed to survive polio. And you're going to put her down because she has a little bit of a limp? Fuck off. Yeah, that to me was like, I felt for her because, you know, as someone who grew up with, deformed feet, my feet messed up, I couldn't perform in like sports. I couldn't do different things like that because my feet were, you know, my feet hurt. You know, my feet hurt for many years. I dealt with a lot of pain over the years until I ended up finally getting what they call corrective surgery. So, I mean, there would be days I'd wake up and I'm in pain, you know, just by waking up. Just by waking up, my feet are in pain. And I would be like, I would tell my mom, I can't go to school today. My feet hurt, you know, like, and I would have to skip day. There would be days, a lot of days I missed school because of my feet hurting. And, if I, like, finally, when I got to, like, you know, teenager, I had saw an orthopedic surgeon, and they're like, this is not going to get better. You know, like, your pain's going to progressively get worse to the point of you being in a wheelchair. And so I went and did experimental surgery, you know, with this doctor to try to correct my feet, which, well, like, almost like it was like a rare form of club foot. That's the way I kind of think about it. And so even today, like, my feet are not 100% like good, you know, so there are different days like my feet will kind of hurt, but this is why I'm trying to lose weight, to try to get my weight down, so that way I'm lighter on my feet and I'm not putting all the strain on my feet. And I try to wear different shoes. Like, I wear Hoka's. Hoka's are a good brand for, like, you know, if you've got like plantar fasciitis, which that's what I have. Hoka's are a good brand for plantar fasciitis. They're not cheap, but they do work. And so I could identify, or, you know, like, I could empathize with Helena a lot in the book, because she was trying to mask her pain. She was trying to act like she was more capable than what she was. Like, when she was riding a horse, she hadn't ridden a horse in like years. And so I very much, you know, like, empathize with her character. So I could understand her stubbornness. And he was, you know, so he basically was getting a little frustrated with her because so he was getting a bit frustrated with her because she would, you know, try to mask that she was in pain, different things like that. Dang, I start coughing. That drives me crazy. Right now, I'm like, I'll get like a tickle in my throat, and it just drives me crazy. So I have to still, like, suck on, like, cough drops and different things like that. It's a cough that just continues to annoy me. I've been running an air purifier in my apartment just to see if it'll kind of, like, help with anything in the air. So anyways, Daniel was a bit frustrated with her because she would be so stubborn. But he was like, hey, let me help you. You know, let me help you. So there were times that he felt like he wasn't good enough for her because of him being, you know, with his, you know, his situation of being born to a smuggler, and, you know, which caused his mother to be involved in the crosshairs, and both his mother and father ended up getting hung for, you know, obviously being smugglers and all that stuff. And so he was being raised by another person, and that person was a smuggler and would do different stuff. So he learned different things from there. So he didn't think he was good enough for Lady Helena, but he still wanted her, you know, like, he still was attracted to her. And he didn't care, like, if she had a limp. Where with Lady Helena, on the other hand, she had this, you know, where she was like, I'm not good enough for him, you know, like, you know, like, she knows basically her full family history of, like, what went on with, like, the titles and everything. And she, you know, knows that she's like, I'm not a lady, you know, so she's like, you know, you don't have to, like, think that I'm above you when I'm not, you know. And her thing was, she just didn't want him lying to her, like, you know, just be honest with me, you know. And so that's what I really appreciated with Helena, is that she didn't like put herself on airs, you know, and everything like that, and try to treat him like he's below her. She didn't do that at all. She was like, you're not going to want me because I'm lame, because I'm a cripple, you know? And he's like, how could you think that, you know? So I did like the book. I gave it 4 stars. I did really enjoy that one a lot. Definitely better than the previous novel. The previous novel, the characters annoyed me. The characters really annoyed me. So I'm continuing on with the series. Right now I need to listen to the rest of the audiobook for I got about 3 chapters into what's that one called again? After the Abduction. It's part of the same series. This one here talks about Juliet, the youngest sister, and the person that kidnapped her. He was going under a different name in the book. So it's, you know, kind of like hidden identity, and now she's being in a way like she's now being blackmailed because that trip could have ruined her reputation, but they were trying to keep it like on the hush hush so that way she can kind of like be reintroduced into society and everything like that. She's now she was like 18 when she had gotten taken. She's now 20. And so she's a little more wiser. And she's like, you know, hey, like, that man who took me, you know, he now needs to, like, marry me kind of thing, you know? Or she needs to, like, you know, he needs help with her reputation. And so they end up coming across his brother. I'll just say that in quotes, brother, because, you know, there's more things to this man. So far, I'm enjoying it. That one's another reread for me because I read these books. I read Sabrina Jeffries, that series, years ago, like early 2000s. So it's been a while since I read them. So I wanted to reread them again, see if I'm like, well, do I still want to keep these books or do I want to like get rid of them, you know, and kind of donate them to the library. And so I'm involved in that one. Another book that I'm kind of like in between right now is, what's it called again? It's a book, I think it's by Maren Moore. Yeah, Maren Moore. This is The Good Girl Exception. It's a part of the, what's it, Hellcats Hockey. I read the first book. I read that last year? I think I read it last year, and I really enjoyed that book. So this one here has it to where it's the guy's an assistant coach, and she was a virgin, and they kind of have like a hookup one night in a bar in the bathroom, which I think is disgusting. I'm like, ugh, why would you have sex in the bar bathroom? It's just, no, that would be the last place I'd be having sex in. Hell no. I don't care how clean that public bathroom is. No. So she loses her virginity to this guy, and she ends up finding out he's the assistant coach for the Hellcats hockey, which is the college hockey. And so he finds out she's a student, and he's like pissed because he, you know, was just looking for hookup, and he used to be part of the NHL. And so this is like, you know, obviously more of a forbidden thing. But I really liked the first book, so I was like, let me delve into the second one, and I'll have to try to delve into more Maren Moore's, because so far I'm enjoying the author. And so those are the books I'm like in between. And I also need to get through Someone to Watch Over Me. I'll see about maybe if I could do that one in April, where I'll try to discuss the original publication copy versus the they ended up doing what the author called a reimagining. So she changed some things around in the book. So I do still want to read that one, even though I'm not going to do an individual review for it. I will still talk about it. So if anybody's interested in that, I'll end up doing that too. But I got to be in the mood to like get through it, you know? And the last ones I'm going to talk about are these ones here that were part of the, what was it called again? After the End dystopian collection. That was a Kickstarter that I ended up putting money into last year. And I finally got the books. I made an individual video on the unboxing so you could see it. That'll be coming up, and you can watch that. But so far, I will say, I am disappointed in this collection. There's some of the novellas I've been reading, I'm not liking. I'm really not liking. But I will say this one here, this is another one that's a part of the collection called Taken by Elizabeth Stevens. And it actually convinced me, you know what? I will check out some Elizabeth Stevens. I will check out some books from this author. Even though I think she gets a little bit too descriptive when it comes to the monster. And that was a bit confusing. But I will say that as I was going through the novella, it got better for me. And I liked it more and more the more I was reading it. Because when I first started it, I wasn't really liking it. But as I was reading it, I was like, you know, this is getting better for me. So once the relationship kind of started to establish with the characters, I liked it better. So this one here is a post-apocalyptic Earth in the future. I believe it was like 2040, 2070, something like that. So the content warning is there's attempted sexual assault in here, and also there's like breeding kink. So a woman wakes up early in a preservation pod. They were all put in these preservation pods, and they were supposed to wake up in like 3,000 years or something like that. And so she ended up being a part of like the repair crew where she was an artist. She was going to like obviously paint murals and different things like that. She was part of the lower classes where there were upper classes, you know, people who had higher jobs and stuff like that. She was part of the lower classes. She ended up waking up early. And now she's talking with this robot name. I think the robot's name was Pam. And she's talking to this robot named Pam. And Pam's telling her, oh, you had gotten woken up early. This is the year, blah, blah, blah. And she's talking with Ren. And so Pam tells her, you cannot wake up any of the other people. You know, like if you wake them up, they have orders to kill you on sight. So you need to do the best with what you have and kind of go from there and, you know, basically try to prepare the new world and all that stuff. So while she's down in the bunker area with all the rest of them are sleeping. This reminded me a bit of, if anybody's ever seen the movie Passengers that had, what's his name again? Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence. I liked that movie. There were some people complaining about it, but I'm like, you know what? I liked the movie. I thought it was sweet. And there's some people being like, it was problematic. And I'm like, whatever. I enjoyed it. But both of them, or I'd say one of them was woken up accidentally. It was a thing that he deliberately woke her up. So I'd say he took her free will away. I will give that. Yeah, I give it that. He took her free will away. But things got better. I'll just say that. I did still like the movie, even though I will say, yeah, there were things that he did that were problematic. I still enjoyed the movie. I still enjoyed it. So that's kind of like what it is with here, where there was an accident that happened and it caused her to get woken up early. And so she's trying to do her best to make do with what she has. So she ends up going up to the top because the top was like radioactive and all that stuff. And so she was looking at the readings like, well, there's still some radiation, but not enough to where it's going to kill you. You know, like you could survive up there. And so she decides to go up to the top because she wants to go and start planting like vegetation, like green beans, things like that. Vegetables, food, because she knows that she's not going to be able to survive on the things that are down below because you're taking away from the other people that will eventually wake up. You know, if you eat all the preserves, you know, all the things that are preserved for you, no one's going to have any food when they get up, you know? So she's like, well, let me go and try to grow these green beans, you know? And I'm like, yeah, you know, try to grow some vegetables for sure. You could survive on vegetables. I mean, plenty of vegetarians do it, you know? You could survive on vegetables. You can plant different things that are high in protein and survive on just vegetables alone. Plenty of vegetarians do it. They just need to, you know, obviously stick to a good, healthy diet, you know, not a bunch of like garbage, you know? So while she's doing it, she keeps seeing like this something in the distance, and she's like, what the heck is that? You know? And so the closer it gets, the more she's like, oh, I don't know if I can go up above and, you know, try to do what I need to do, because whatever it is, it's getting closer, you know? Till finally what happens is she ends up getting grabbed. And so she recognizes these people as, some of them look like she said humanoids. They don't look particularly like, they don't look 100% human. And the only thing I could think of is because they were up above, they dealt with radiation. And so it obviously mutated their bodies a bit. You know, obviously they were able to survive up there, but their bodies are probably mutated in some way where they don't look like humans anymore. And then what's with these humans are these huge, like, beasts, like aliens, you know? So she ends up getting taken, and they're speaking all in like a different language. And one of the humanoids tries to sexually assault her, because they're more of like, their type of like tribe is more of an aggressive type of tribe, where they like aggressively have sex and different things like that, you know? And she doesn't want that, you know? So the monster that is kind of quiet and kind of keeps to himself ends up stopping the humanoid from sexually assaulting her, and he ends up taking her into his like area, his like tent area. And so she, in order for him to protect her, she kind of like offers herself sexually, in order for him to protect her from the other creatures and humanoids and stuff. And so she ends up doing that. And so he very much like falls for her like quick. Like he quickly falls for her. He's very sweet though. His name is Lacus. So I said, I thought this was a decent novella. There were times I was a bit confused with the body of the creature. I had to keep looking at the picture to try to visualize what I was like trying to picture in my head, because it was very confusing. Like when she talked about like different parts of his body that were more of like almost hard, like almost like a stony kind of thing. And I was like, this is kind of weird. And so like I really had to try to keep picturing that in my head, you know, and try to make it like more humanoid, because I can't get into the stories where they look too beastly, because then it's like bestiality, and I'm just like, ew, I'm not into that. So I had to kind of keep picturing something that looked more humanoid, you know, and that's what I kept like trying to picture, is that in order to like get around the whole like them having sex and everything. So I did end up enjoying it, you know, for what it was. I would say I probably like, I'm not sure if I would have like, I gave it 4, but maybe I would have gave it like more of a 3.5 or 3.75 or whatever it is. But I just, you know, I ended up giving it a 4 because I did still enjoy the novella, even though, like I said, that I did feel like his character was a bit confusing for me to kind of picture in my head. But I liked the way he treated her. He was very sweet. He was very sweet. He could have been like really nasty with her, but he was, him looking more like a monster was more nicer to her than the ones that looked more like her, you know? So I was trying to get through some of the other ebooks that I had. So I tried to get into this one here, And I ended up looking up the author of, because I was like, who the heck is like Nina Saxena? So this book is Maya. I ended up finding out this is Nisha Sharma. This is the, she also goes by Nisha Sharma. Nisha Sharma was the one that did that book, Dating Dr. Dill. I did not like that book. I ended up DNFing it. Yeah, I just was like, I wasn't into it. And I'd say I've run into her when I used to have TikTok, and I did not like her attitude. She was a biatch. So I don't like certain authors, especially when they have certain social media and they like to like, I'm like, shut the fuck up and write your book. Certain authors I just don't particularly like. They rub me the wrong way. She's the one that rubbed me the wrong way. So I was like, okay, well, let me try this one here. And unfortunately, I did not like it. There was too much going on in this fucking novella. Too much going on in this novella. So we have the characters of, I think it's Maya, it could be Maya, M-A-Y-A, and Isaiah. So I said it's Earth in 2040, and Maya is on the run. She was taken by the government years ago when she was 22 years old. She's now mostly robotic parts. Now, her name is not even her real name. You know, she goes by M-A-Y-A, but it's like, it's short for like all this other crap, you know. So Isaiah Starr is a shifter wolf pack leader. And then we're talking about also wormholes, like going into different dimensions and stuff like that. And I'm just like, oh, you lost me. You've lost me. So I said I ended up DNFing this book because it had too many things going on at the same time that made the plot confusing. So one, she's some kind of half human, half robot that escapes the laboratory she was in through a portal to a different world. Now this is like still considered Earth, but it's like a different like time frame or like another dimension of Earth. And I'm just like, what the fuck is going on here? It was confusing. 2, the main male character is an alpha wolf shifter that bonds right away with the heroine, and he's just now realizes that there are different portals to other universes. His father knew about it. He has this conversation with his dad, and his dad's like, oh, you discovered it? And I'm like, why didn't you tell your son years ago that there's fucking portals to different other areas? Why is your son having to discover this? Come on. I said it was just way too complex for a novella, and it was a paranormal sci-fi book, and that's just too much for me to deal with. And like, if I'm gonna read a paranormal, I want it to be straight paranormal. I don't want fucking sci-fi shit going on in the book too. It's just, what the hell's going on here? It's way too much going on, you know? It was way too confusing, and I'm just like, and then he falls for her. And I'm like, okay, how are we going to have it to where she develops feelings for him? You know, I'm like, in a novella with all this shit going on. And I'm just like, it's too much. Let's just focus on the romance. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for all this other backstory crap. I'm looking for a romance. And it's a novella. So you have a lot of work to do just to establish the relationship. And now you're adding in wolf shifters, which that's a whole fucking storyline in itself. Then you've got her being half robot and was kidnapped by the government. She was used as, you know, like they take pieces away, add pieces of robot to her. She's got all these like extra powers now. And I'm just like, huh? And then, like I said, you add in portals. You just took me out. There's too much going on in this fucking novella. So I was like, no. Not about to try to get through this fucking thing. And the next one was Skin by Nikki Payne. It's another one where I was like, no, I don't like this. I don't like this. It was way too weird and confusing for me. Ended up DNFing it around 9%. So it says when Fowl's ex, her name's Fowl, F-A-W-L, Fowl. Okay. Fowl's ex dumps her for her stepsister. She takes the messiest deal imaginable. Dig up dirt on an elite family for a golden ticket out of the underground. Simple, right? No. Now she somehow checks notes, married to an emotionless machine who's weirdly obsessed with her skin. So it has like extreme body modification in here, hints of cannibalism, intercourse, and an altered state. I'm sorry, but that's way too fucking weird for me. That's way too weird for me. This futuristic world has it to where humans want to get all these like modifications to their body to make themselves look more robotic. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Ew. That's like the people who are obsessed with like cosmetic surgery and they do all this stuff to make their face look perfect. But it makes them look plastic, like a fucking Barbie doll. And I'm just like, embrace your imperfections. The amount of, oh my God, the amount of people I see that get those like buckle surgery where it's all like, you know, like sucked in. And I'm just like, ew. Ew. You look like a skeletal. It's not attractive to me. And then you get these women who get these like huge, big lip fillers. And I'm just like, I'm sorry. I've had to embrace my thin lips. I've had to embrace my big ass nose I have. I've had to learn to accept those things about myself. Yeah, I am not a supermodel, clearly. But I'm like, I've had to look at that and be like, if I go and get my nose done, if I get rhinoplasty, what else am I not going to like about my body to the point where I'm going to look fucking like a Barbie, you know? It just was like, I'm not about to do that. I don't want to do that, you know? Get your boobs lifted, get the tummy tuck, get all these other things done to you. And it's like, you know, oh, make yourself perfect. It kind of reminds me of like the movie Gattaca, if anybody's ever saw that, where you have these babies that are being born and they're perfect. You know, everyone's got perfect eyesight and perfect hair. No one goes bald. No one all this other stuff. And I'm like, because you've gone and you've played God, even though I'm not a religious person, but in a way I'm like, you've gone and played God in a way where you're altering people's DNAs. You know, it's like the people who are trying to erase. There are now people out there who are Down syndrome that now have to justify their existence. Because there's people out there who basically want to be like, oh, we can detect when a baby is going to be born with Down syndrome. Oh, we can just destroy that fetus. To me, personally, I find that to be disgusting. I've personally known people with Down syndrome, and they're great people. And the fact that you want to justify destroying them because they're going to be born that way. If I would have known my youngest daughter was going to be autistic before in the womb, I would have still had her. Because she's a baby. She's a life. You know, and people may not agree with me, and that's fine. Don't agree with me. But I find that to be disgusting. And so, you now have people in Congress that are Down syndrome that now have to justify their existence. That's sad. So that's what it reminds me of. It reminds me of kind of like Gattaca, where you've got these people who are like now doing all of these like experiments to their bodies and everything to make themselves look more robotic because the robots are like sexual. Like, you're now attractive to robots. And I'm just like, ew. This story to me was just gross. The more I read it, the more I'm like, this is gross. I can't get behind this. You know, like, I can't. You're now attracted to the robot. Okay, yeah. I couldn't get into it. I know there's some other people that I'm friends with on Goodreads that they enjoyed it, and that's great that you really enjoyed it, but I couldn't really get into it because I'm like, this is too weird for me. I cannot get behind this. You know, like, modifications to your body and all these other things. It's like, the more I grow up, the more I get older, the more I'm like, I hate piercings on people. I don't like it. If you want to get piercings for yourself, that's fine. It's your body. You know, your body, you make that choice for yourself. Same thing with tattoos. You make that choice for yourself. But the more I see people with tattoos and piercings, the more I'm like, ugh. I thought about getting piercings when I was younger. Same thing with like tattoos. I thought about getting tattoos when I was younger too. But as I've gotten older, more I'm like, I'm so glad I never did. I'm so glad I never got all these piercings to my face. I'm so glad I never like got all these tattoos. Like I'm not tattooed at all. I've never gotten a tattoo. The more I'm like, I'm fickle. I would change my mind just really quickly. And now you're putting all this stuff, like all this ink, permanent ink on your skin. And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to change my mind later on and decide not to do it. And like, oh, like you get you get your nips pierced. It like takes like, it could take up to 6 months for them to fully heal. 6 months for your nips to fully heal from a piercing. Hell no. You know, so the more I'm like, I see that stuff, the more I'm like, eh. Like, and like I said, if it's your body, if you want to do it to yourself, you know, your body's a canvas, you want to, you know, whatever, that's your choice. I personally would not do that for myself though, you know. Now I'm like, you know, no tattoos for me, no piercings. I don't want to get any kind of like cosmetic surgery, any of that stuff. I'd rather just age gracefully, go from there. So this one here, the more I was trying to, you know, trying to get through it, trying to read it, the more I'm like, ew, you know, ew. I can't get into that type of stuff. So yeah, the more I was like, I'm not feeling this one. And so I ended up DNFing that one too. And I'm like, oh man, so far I am not really enjoying this, this collection. And I've only really, like I said, I've only really liked 2 of the novellas. And I think that Elizabeth Stevens and Claire Kent, I think they really do well with post-apocalyptic, or even like Elizabeth Stevens. Like I think she does well with when it comes to that series that she's done before. I can't remember the name of it, but it's more of like an alien series where it's got aliens and different creatures and things like that. It's kind of more futuristic. So this is more of like in her wheelhouse. And I think some of these other authors, this type of story is not in their wheelhouse. You know, it's not something that, it's like telling Stephen King to create a romance novel. He's not a romance author. So you're taking these people and telling them, oh, we're going to create these post-apocalyptic type of stories for this collection. And I just think this was the wrong authors to do it with. I think they could have used other authors that could have came up with better stories for this collection, you know? So I tried to get into Prima by Sherry Thomas. That's another one. This one here is more of like post-apocalyptic, where this woman ends up getting discovered. He ends up discovering this woman who's like naked and all that stuff. And so trying to take care of her, I think. And I was just kind of like, I'm getting confused here. It was very confusing for me. I'm going to try to get back into it, like when I feel like it. But right now I DNF'd it. And I'm like, I'm going to try to get back into it again. But the other ones, I'm just like, it was too confusing. I could not get into them. And this one here, Prima, did not get good reviews. There's a lot of people who didn't like it. It's got like a 3-something on Goodreads. A lot of people did not like this one. And I'm getting so tired of like pausing my video because these people keep running their stupid water. So anyways, that's it for this video here. Before they turn the freaking water on again. That's it for this video here. Some duds, obviously. Some duds this month. But there were, you know, like a few good books this month that I really enjoyed. So I was glad for that. And then, like I said, I'm gonna try to get into like this one here, more books by Meredith Duran in April. Try to get into maybe I can get into maybe some Loretta Chase possibly, and go from there. But I'm going to continue getting through my historical romances that I currently, you know, physically have. Try to get through as many of them this year as I can, to try to lighten my load a little bit, because my husband like will still ask me like, hey, you know, those books that you picked up at that, you know, festival, have you read those yet? And I'm like, no, I haven't read them yet. I'm like, I hate when someone like, you're like, oh, you haven't read those books yet? No, because I'm like, I'm in that thing of like, book collecting is a different hobby than it is book reading. And I have to be in the mood to read like this book or that book, you know? And so I'm like, I'm not in the mood, I'm not ready to read that yet. It's going to sit on my shelf for a while, you know? Where my husband, I think, can go through a TBR, and he could do a TBR, and I'm like, I'm a mood reader, man. I'm not a TBR person. I can't do TBRs. I can mood read, and that's what I do. Whatever I'm in the mood for. Eventually, I'll get around to reading the book, you know, and I'll do that. So I'm like, no, I haven't read it yet, you know, but I am taking some of my paperbacks that I have, and I'm going to try to read each book that I have in a stack and try to get through a few chapters. If within those few chapters, if I'm not liking the book, I'm not really caring about the stories of the character, then I'm just going to end up, you know, selling that book. Because I put books on my Pango Books account, and I sell them for cheap on there. And so that kind of helps me with my, also my book buying too, where sometimes I can find books on there that'll be used in good condition, that don't cost a lot. And so I'll end up getting books through my Pango Books account then, and it kind of like saves me money, saves me from spending money. So I can let the amount build up on my Pango Books of like how much I can use for Pango Bucks and all that stuff. And I'll let it build up a little bit, and then I'm like, oh, wow, I want some new books, and I could search through people's accounts and be like, oh, I want that book. I'm going to put that in my cart. Oh, here's another book I could put in my cart. And then, you know, go up to like the amount that I can because you have to add in, you have to tack in, like, it's going to cost money for shipping and all that stuff, because shipping isn't free on there. It costs to ship, and go from there. But yeah, that's what I've been doing lately, is just taking books that I have that are in good condition that I'm like, I don't want this book anymore. And I just put on my Pango Books and sell them. You know, I'm not getting a lot of money for them, but people are really picky on what they want to spend. And I'm like, look, this book is like new and you want to be cheap? Okay. Anyways, that's it for this one here. Have yourselves a good day. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to each other. And I'll see you all on the next video. All right. Bye.